Hello and welcome. This is a tutorial on how we're going to do kit bashing with Blender for 3D models. Just a little background. Kit bashing is originally started with airplane models and train models. Back in the old days when people put together plastic models, they basically taking one part of a model, be it a bomb or a landing gear, and merging it with another model to create a whole new model. Games Workshop sort of streamlined it in the early years before 3D printing came along. And basically you would buy a group of soldiers or assault squads or Marines, whatever you want to refer to them as, and you bought them on sets of sprues. And each sprue has individual parts which you would cut out and basically merge together. So here's all like chest pieces, here's arm pieces, you have shoulder pieces, you have legs. And what you do is you'd cut these out and then you could glue them in. So I could have one Marine with a power saw and another one with a power claw, or one with a power hammer and one with a shield. So you could mix and match them how you wanted to do your miniatures. As 3D printing comes along, basically what we're going to be doing is putting pieces of models together in an STL, which we can then print ourselves. More and more creators, content creators within Patreon or other sites, are actually creating modular minis. Artisan Guild is one who every month they give you 4 to 6 modular minis where you can swap out weapons and hands and stuff like that and create unique miniatures just within their miniature set. Monster Encounters is another one. Again, here's a sample dwarf which again has different bits that you can swap in to create different miniatures. I can do dual fists, I can do dual maces, a mace and a hammer, a mace and an axe, or a mace and a shield. So I can put my miniatures together how I want. Some creators create heads. So here's RG Sculpt, another one I follow. He creates a bunch of different heads, which you can then glue on at different angles or piece together, not glue on. Well, you could. You could print them separately and then swap them out as you want for that. So we're going to talk about basically taking the first series video is just going to be simple, is basically using modular minis. So here's Blender. Blender is a free program you can download. All you got to do is Google search Blender. You want Blender 2.8 or newer. A big release was 2.8 and they changed a lot of functionality. And I'm using 2.8 myself. I believe 2.8.1 is currently out. So basically you want to go up to File and Import. So Blender has its own file format called Blend, B-L-E-N-D. And most models you're going to get are in STL format. You will find some in OBJ object formats, and there's some other formats as well. But probably 90% of the models you're going to get either from Thingiverse or from a Patreon creator are going to be STLs. So right now we're just going to go and I'm going to show you how to kit bash some models, putting together, the different ones that they have. So here's a Deepwood elf from Artisan Guild who basically he creates some really nice fine models and allows you to kit bash or modularize your hands and such. So he's got, 2 hands, or he's got a bunch of hands, but 2 that I grabbed real quickly was here's one for a bow. So I can have a bow and all I'd have to do is just position that on there and you just move it. So real quickly, this is just the movement cursor. This is to rotate around. As you can see, I rotate around the world, and this allows me to pan left and right, or move the model, I guess. So what you want to do is try and get that model in that joint. Now you could print these as 2 separate models, but if you put them in together and save it as an STL, it'll print as a single model. Now I could rotate this bow if I want some more. And such, but so he has another bit that I'll import for his other hand, and where is it? Here it is, just an open hand. And so again, I can just position that for wherever. Oops, I'm not even close. That's why I got to rotate around. Okay, so you just move it around with the 3D axis. Now you can just grab it and try and shift it, but it changes all axes once. So right there, that's good. Obviously, he's getting a little overlap on his thumb and such. And basically, I could save this off and then print it on my 3D printer. But let's say I want to have this bit, I want to switch his hands. I want to have this, he's reaching for something, you know, and his bow is in his right hand. And so what you can do is just real simply is you can right click on the object that you have. So again, here's 3 different objects and I can hide them individually within Blender. Okay, so I'm going to click on here. As you can see, it's highlighted by an orange outline. And so I'm just going to right click that and I'm going to go mirror and I'm going to snap to the Y global. So basically that just flipped it and it actually moved it away. But if you now look at it and we rotate it around, it's actually his right hand, or could be used as his right hand. So I'm just going to rotate this. Oops, too much. And it's a little tricky to get used to, and it takes practice. Okay. Now I'm just going to hide his right hand for now. And then I'm just going to move this again. So this is move, this is rotate, and this is scale. Again, I don't want to go too much in the details of Blender, how to use Blender, because it's really, there's plenty of videos out there that people do more. So again, here we go. We're just moving this in and doing that down. Now, one thing is you notice is when I rotate it, it's rotating relative to this point of origin, okay? Which makes it hard to get it positioned in his hand. So a trick that I've learned is basically you want to go to the object. Let's hide him for now. And you want to click on the object and we're going to go into, we're in object mode by default and we're going to go to edit mode. Now edit mode basically shows you all the vertices, the edges, or the faces. So each one I can select different, you know, that's selecting all the faces. This will select all the vertices of a particular point, or this will select all the edges. So we're going to go to vertex mode, which again, you can vertex. We're going to go in here and we're going to select one right at the base of his wrist, basically where I want to sort of rotate things around. I'm then going to go to mesh and I'm going to go snap and I'm going to say cursor to selected. So my cursor, real quickly, is this point down here with the little white or red and black outline. So I've got that selected. And all I did was I just clicked on it, okay? So I'm just clicking on a point, and I'm going to go snap, cursor to selected. So you can see now my spot's there. If we look out, it's no longer there. But when we go back into object mode, my object mode's still down there. And so what I want to do is I want to say object, set origin to 3D cursor. So now that sets that origin, and when I rotate, you can see I rotate around that specific origin. So when we turn our model back on, it's much easier to position my hand because it's relative to the base of his hand, which is where I want to sort of put it out. So I'm just going to rotate that slightly. We're going to rotate it down that way. And then I'm going to move, and again, moves, everything's off the same origin. And we'll just move that out a little bit, move it down, and there. Whoops. Moved it slightly. Okay, and there. So now he's holding the left-hand bow, and I basically have to do the same thing for the right hand now. So I can go here, we'll hide him, we'll hide the bow as well. I'm going to go in right now before I do anything else or move it at all, and I'm just going to do that little trick again. So again, what you want to do is get to the point, or be able to see the point that you want to rotate from. We're going to go to edit mode, and then we're just going to select a pixel, or the vertex of where we want, until I do too much Photoshop. Vertex of where I want, and you can see that the cursor's right there, but I actually want to move that, because that was where the cursor was for the bow. I'm going to say cursor to selected, snap, cursor to selected, which moves it to there. And then, so when I go here, object mode, I can then go object, set origin to 3D cursor. Okay. So now when we bring our bow, we'll leave the bow hidden for now. So I want to rotate this. So again, it's rotating around there. So first thing I want to do is I need to mirror it like we did at the other one. So again, we'll go back to select. I'm just going to click on it, mirror along the x-axis. And then, so that basically flips it horizontally. And then I'm just going to move this forward. It's obviously way too far out there, but not too bad. And then I'm going to rotate it so it doesn't look like he broke his wrist. Okay, and then we're just going to shift it a little bit more. Go up a little bit, and then just down and in. Now obviously you can spend more time. You can, zoom in to make sure you're getting there. So actually when we zoom in, we can obviously see we're way too low, and it probably needs to be rotated a little bit more. But again, I'm not going to do too unique of a job or too detailed of a job, just because again, we've got stuff to go through. Okay. So then I can just turn on that, and then there we go. And so now he's like trying to reach for something as he's holding out his bow. So again, that's sort of kit bashing. These were two modular components for this model, and all I did was swap them around. Now I could also take this and put it on a different model, or I could take his hand, because he does very nice hands, and I could put that on a different model. So that's different ways of kit bashing. Our next example I'm going to show, which is again using, let's just go over some terms. Again, these are objects. These, in this collection, you can see I have 3 different objects. I can hide them, the individual objects. When we go into edit mode, you see basically these 2 objects are still in gray because I'm not editing those. I'm only editing the one that I'm on, or that I had selected. So again, this is a single mesh. So if I select part of his ear, you can see I selected part of his ear, and I go select, and I say, give me everything that's linked to that. And you can see his entire body is linked to it. Okay. So I can move that, I can scale it, in this mode or object mode, and I'm moving that whole object, And so you've got objects and you've got meshes. One patron that I like that I haven't mentioned yet, so let's actually just go new, get rid of him, I don't want to save him, and there we go, is Velrock Arts. Now he does some pretty nice miniatures, top quality miniatures, but I'll show you what I really like about his miniatures. He doesn't do modular miniatures per se, as in, giving you different parts, or separate objects, I should say, but he does do very much modular miniatures. So right now we've got where is it? My Goblin Rogue. Okay, so this is one of his previous miniatures, and it takes a second to load. Okay. And you can see, it's not a bad miniature, but it's he's got this quiver, and he doesn't have a bow on him, and so that's one of the things, and for my figure, I want to basically have a fighter rogue type, and basically I wanted to have a sword and a shield. So what I really like about his miniatures, actually I love about his miniatures, is, so remember how the other ones we talked, whereas I select his ear and then I go select and select everything that's linked. You'll see here, not everything is linked, though it's not gray like the other ones. They're not separate objects. What they are separate meshes. So each one of these is an individual mesh, which is really nice, because then I can go select, part of his sword, go down and say linked, give me that. So that gives me that linked. Now one thing I can do is I can move that. I can easily move it off. So now again, that's not creating a separate object. So again, I only have the one object up here. And when I hide it, it hides that. What it's doing is creating separate meshes. Now when I printed this, it would actually print 2 separate objects. But so if I like this sword, I can break this sword off and use it on another one, or if I like some other pieces of them. So one way to break it out is basically I could delete all this. But an easier way is you right click on it and you say separate, and I want to separate selection. And so what that does is you can see it now became a separate object. So up here, basically I've got the original Goblin, and now I've got this, it's named it after the same parent object. So in this case, Goblin Rogue 001. So, but you can see it's just, when I hide it, it's just that single sword. So let's actually just rename this sword. Okay. But as you can see, when I select his ear, whoops, make sure we're on the right one here. Oh, I'm not in select mode. So when again, I select his ear and I say select everything that's linked to that, he's got all these black parts that are separate meshes, so I can separate them. So if I want less or more earrings, I can duplicate these or cut these out. I can swap this out. I can swap some of his armor out, which is really, really nice. And like, look at his bow. So again, I don't want his bow on there, so I can go in and say, okay, give me this bow, and say basically select everything that's linked. As you can see, this is even separate objects. So I got one arrow and a couple others, but if we go in here, you know, there's a whole bunch of arrows in here. So let's, again, I can hold shift and select some more and then say select everything that's linked. You know, and I'm still missing a couple bows, and I did catch that other piece down there. So again, we'll just one more shift and select, and I selected some more and then select here. So that's one thing I really like about Velrock Arts figures is there are a whole bunch of separate meshes, and it gives you so much flexibility, especially for kit bashing. So here I've got this whole quiver with a whole bunch of bows in there. I can then again right click on it and go separate selection. And now I have another object in here, Goblin Rogue 1. And this is basically a quiver. So now I have a quiver and a sword that I could kit bash with other models, if I like the styles, and I do like the styles, without, you know, and still have this original model. Now again, what I would suggest is saving this as a Blender model, because again, you may want to go back in and change it in the future. Goblin Rogue, plus you don't modify your original STL. So if you ever want to go back and you do want a Goblin Rogue with dual swords in a Blender, you still have that original file. So now here we've got this guy, and you know, I basically wanted a sword with, or a goblin with a sword and a shield. So now I've got to get a shield. So if I go back out and I import another STL, I've got a guard with an axe, again by Velrock Miniatures, or Velrock Arts. Okay, so I'm just going to shift this here so you can see that we've now got a guard, and then I'm just going to move him off to the side. Okay, and so there's the shield that I want to use. So again, if I click on him and we go object to edit mode. Now also Blender has tons of shortcuts. I'm just going to the menus so people can learn how to use it if you're not familiar with it. Basically tab will get you between, so if you hit tab, it takes you between those two modes. You know, and so it's much quicker once you start learning short keys. So again, if we select this guy, and whoops, I moved him. Didn't want to move him. Control Z undoes. I'm just going to select part of his boot and then select all the linked. You can see his shoulder pads are separate, his arm pads, his weapon, his loincloth and belt and helmet are all separate pieces. So it's really nice for kit bashers, you know, and I love it. And you can even see down here, his beard is separate. So I could actually go in, select part of his beard there. It's actually, if I select that and go select link, you'll see it's actually two different pieces. So I'm going to shift select and select that, and then select linked. And so I've got his beard. So now I can just move that off or delete it. Okay. And if we go back into object mode, you can now see, you know, basically I've got a, you know, town guard without a beard. Whereas, so just, you know, just some minor changes there. You'll also notice he does do add supports for certain areas, which are easy enough to get rid of again. So you just go into edit mode, select a couple pixels, whoops, select a couple pixels of that and go select linked. And then I can just X for delete and delete vertices, because I'll put my own supports in there. So I usually don't use his supports, but they're there if you need it. So again, that's there. And we'll again take a look at some other pieces here, just look at the different art pieces he has. So I'm going to select part of his helmet, select L, or linked. So then again, there's his helmet. Okay, so again, if I go back to object mode, so again, I haven't broken these pieces out because right now I don't need them. So you can see he's got tons of different pieces that you can kit bash with and take them in there. So again, we're interested in the shield, so let's go after the shield this time. So I'm going to go in and select edit mode. And I'm going to select part of his shield. Whoops, I'm in move mode again, so I just moved that helmet some more. So I'm going to select part of his shield. Now I know the handle's separate, and actually these two little rings here are separate as well. So I'm just going to select all those. Again, shift select, and then go select linked and linked. And now see, you can see I got all pieces. So again, to break it out, we're going to go right click and bring up separate and separate by selection. And you'll see it'll create a new object over here, new guard axe, and it separates it from the rest. So again, if I hide that, he no longer has his shield. So I'm going to actually go out of edit mode. And I'm just going to hide him for now. And I'm going to bring back our shield. And we'll actually label it. I highly recommend labeling these. And so again, what we're going to do is, so again, I'm orienting from the original model for this. So I want to go in here and I'm just going to do our little trick again. And there may be easier ways to do this. Again, I am no expert. I'm learning basically as I go along. I'm going to select on this handle because again, I want to rotate there. We're going to go mesh, snap, select cursor to selected. And you see it pops there. Go back out to object mode. Go to object, set origin, origin to cursor. So now it's going to be much easier to place around his hand. Okay, so I'm just going to lower that. And then we're going to do some rotation. So we want to rotate it that way, and then I got to rotate it there, and that actually doesn't look that bad right off the start. Let's just raise it a little bit, maybe move it a little bit to the side. So there's his shield. Now it does look a little big, but you could leave it at that and print it. What I do recommend for kit bashing, so you can see down here, is we've got a gap between his arms. So that's basically putting all the weight on these pieces. So what a lot of people will do is they'll actually attach the arm or make it so it touches the arm. So again, what I'm going to do is just go into rotate and just rotate that slightly. And so it's just touching there. So when it prints with a resin printer, it'll just see these two objects and print it as one object, which is really nice. Okay. And so there we go. Now it actually could, looking at his wrist, probably rotate a little bit more, a little bit that way. And we're probably pretty good there. Yep. And we're still touching the back. So there we go. Now I've got a goblin with a sword and a shield. And let's put a backpack on him. So again, I'm going to go out and import another STL. And where is it? Halfling. I got a Halfling Adventure, again from Velrock Arts. Takes us up. There he is. He's loaded. So I'm going to go there and we're going to go to object mode and move. And then I'm just going to shift him over to the side. Okay, and so basically I want this nice side sack here. So I'll show you how to do that. So again, we're going to go into object mode or edit mode. And then I'm going to select, the halfling and then select linked. Now, if you've got separate objects already, you don't have to do this, obviously. And in my next video, I'll go in how to cut pieces out. But that's a little bit more complex, so I figured I'd leave that for a separate video. So again, here you can see I've got, basically a plain dress halfling with a whole bunch of things. Even his eyes are separate, or his eyebrows are separate, both. His coat, his buttons here, they're all separate. So again, what we're after is we're after this pack and this strap here. So I'm going to go back into edit mode. And I'm just going to select that. And And I know from a fact that this buckle is separate. So if I needed a buckle, I could grab that. That's actually separate. And this buckle here is separate. And then this pack obviously is separate. And then we're just going to swing around to the back because this buckle in the back here as well, this square buckle here is also separate. So if I then go up to select linked, you can see basically I've got everything in the back and I've got everything in the front. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to break that off. We're going to right click on it, go to separate, selection. Okay, and then we're just going to hide that halfling. And so there's my pack. And let's get it back into object mode. So again here, now normally I would reset this, but I'm not going to do a whole lot of rotating. If you're not doing a lot of rotating, you really don't have to separate it. So again, I'm just going to raise this up and I'm going to turn from the side. And basically I want to get it so it's right at the proper height and about halfway through front to back. So right about there. Let's just check that from the front. That looks good. It's hanging down a little bit there, but not too bad. So there we go. So now, but obviously I'm not riding properly on here. Okay, and the back is sort of a little bit, under the cloth. Now the easy way to fix that is I can go to sculpt mode this time. Okay, and sculpt mode you can do a whole bunch of things. Again, there's separate tutorials on that. I'm just doing some basic tutorials. So I'm going to go down to the grab, which is the first yellow, and I'm basically going to grab his strap and I want to pull it out. So I'm actually going to move it to an angle so I can get the proper angle. I'm just going to go here and actually, whoops, let's undo that. I'm going to increase it. So it focuses, if you look at it, it starts grabbing just with there. So if I move just apart, it's moving that inner circle more than anything else, but it does move the outer circle proportional. So basically what I want to do is I actually want to increase that such that the inner circle is pretty much the width of the belt of the item. That way I know I'm moving everything. So now again, I'm just going to go here. I'm going to grab here. As you can see, I can move the whole belt now. And I'm just going to pull that out. So it's just basically out above his cape. Okay, I'm just going to maybe smooth that a little bit. And then so if we look at it from the back, it looks good. Actually, I'm just going to shift it down a little bit. Okay, to give it a nice straight flow. Okay, then we're just going to swing around to the front and we're going to do the same thing for the front. I'm just going to pull it out a little bit at a time. Okay. Now, as you can see, I sort of did thicken it here, but I can grab the back side and just move that forward. Now we'll just look at it from the front. And again, we'll pull that out. So I'm just going to swing around to this side. And try and pull that out a little bit more. There we go. Okay, I'm going to go down to his belt. And just pull that out so it's there. And there we go. Maybe right there a little bit more. And then we're just going to go back into object mode. And there we go. So he's still got a little bit there. And I could I'll probably take more time and just slowly tweak that, pull that in. So if you just go into sculpt mode and just get in closer, you can do a finer grain pulling that in. So let's actually just pull this part back. So again, a lot of brushes are relative to how far you are out. So if I zoom in close, it's just pulling this little section out. Again, because it's relative to the brush. Okay. And I'm just going to, we'll just go real quickly. I'm just going to smooth this. That's way too big. Whoops, too much. Oh, my pressure's way up. I'm just going to smooth that out a little bit. just so it's not as bulky. There we go. Okay. That looks pretty good, because again, when you print this guy's only about an inch to an inch and a half tall, if that. So again, you're not going to notice those little issues there. But again, if you want, and you want to be a perfectionist, you can take the time and fix them. But there we go. That's pretty much it for my first tutorial on kit bashing. It's a little long, but hopefully you enjoyed it. And in my next one, we'll get into how to cut bits and such. In fact, I'll save this guy off as Goblin Rogue, let's say with shield. Okay, and so in my next tutorial, I'll basically show you how we can rotate this with his hand and such, and then do some other stuff. Thank you for watching. If you have any comments, just please leave them below.